Welcome back to our social studies class. Today we are going to start, children, with the third chapter of geography, that is water. Now, starting with this chapter, children, you all know that our planet Earth is divided into three spheres: lithosphere, that is land; atmosphere, that is air; and hydrosphere, that is water. Okay, so in this chapter, we are going to study about hydrosphere. Now, you all know that how much essential water is in our life. On our planet Earth, water, it exists in three states: solid, liquid, and gaseous. Okay. Now, hydrosphere, children, it consists of all the three states of this water. The ice caps in the polar regions also come under hydrosphere. The water of oceans, rivers, and other water bodies also comes under hydrosphere. And the water vapor in the atmosphere, that also is included under this term hydrosphere. Okay. Now, you all must be aware of this term, children, evaporation. You might have done in your lower standards, but here it is in much detail. See, water, children, it keeps on changing its form, okay, from one form to another by absorbing, either it absorbs or it gives out heat. Okay. Now, during the summertime, children, you already know that during summers the temperature is high. Okay, so as the temperature rises, what happens to the snow which is there on the mountains? That snow absorbs the heat. Okay, and it starts melting down, and as it starts melting down, it changes its form. Okay, that snow is a form of water only. Okay, but now here it is changing its form, it is melting down and running down. Okay, so it runs down in streams. During the daytime, children, water bodies on the earth, this covers all the water bodies, they absorb the heat. Okay, and some of the water, children, from these water bodies, it changes into the water vapor. So now water is changing from liquid to gaseous form. Okay, and goes into the atmosphere. Where does this go? Into the atmosphere. This process is known as evaporation. See, it is given the process by which water, that is in bracket they have given any liquid, changes into water vapor, that means gas, is known as evaporation. Water evaporates continuously from all the water bodies and from the land surface. But children, this evaporation process is highest on which days? On hot, windy, and dry days. Okay. Not only this, children, water vapor is also emitted by plants. Emitted means sending out. Okay. Mainly from which part of the plant? Mainly from the leaves. And this process, children, is known as transpiration. Now talking about humidity. Now, what is humidity? The amount of water vapor which is present in the atmosphere is known as humidity. Nami, जिसको हम बोलते हैं. Okay. And during this time you feel very sticky. Okay, stickiness. There is a lot of moisture in the air. Now, humidity, children, it varies from place to place. Varies means it differs from one place to another, from time to time it changes. Now, there are a few points which they have discussed over here. See, first point is that humidity, children, it is more over the oceans in comparison to land. It is lesser over land. Then in the next point they are telling that if we are talking about the two regions, hot and cold, then humidity is greater over hot regions in comparison to the cold ones. Okay. Then in the third point they are telling that humidity increases in summer. Okay, because already it is very hot. Okay, and it decreases in the winter. Then in the fourth point they are telling that it also decreases as one goes higher up into the atmosphere. As we go up high into the atmosphere, it decreases. Humidity decreases. Understood? Now on the right side at the top, they are discussing an important point. What it is, see, when it is hot, we perspire. Perspire means to lose liquid through your skin, okay, or sweat. Now sweat yani pasina aana, okay. Now the sweat, children, it evaporates. Pasina jo hai, the sweat, that evaporates, and this has a cooling effect. When it evaporates, you feel cool. Okay. However, if the humidity is high, now if the humidity in the atmosphere, children, is high, the rate of evaporation is reduced. Okay, so the rate during that time, the rate of evaporation of this sweat, that decreases, that reduces. Therefore, on a hot, humid day, we perspire. We lose liquid through the skin, but the sweat पर जो पसीना है, that does not evaporate. वो evaporate नहीं होता है, and therefore we feel very uncomfortable. We feel very sticky. Okay. Next, they are telling that this process of evaporation, it is a continuous process. Okay, but this doesn't mean that atmosphere will keep on storing the water vapor. Okay, air can hold only a certain amount of water vapor, and when this air, children, it contains as much water vapor as it can hold at a given temperature, what it is known as, it is said to be saturated. Okay, now warm air, children, can hold more water vapor. If we compare warm and cold air, then warm air can hold more water vapor in comparison to the cold air. Okay. Now talking about condensation. Now in the previous paragraph, children, we studied that at a particular temperature, air can hold only certain amount of water vapor. Okay. But what if the temperature starts falling? During that time, this capacity of air to hold the water vapor, it starts decreasing. So, when the temperature falls, air is no longer able to hold all the water vapor, okay, which it is carrying. So, the excess vapor, children, or you can say the extra vapor, it changes into tiny droplets of water. And this whole process is known as condensation. This process, children, it leads to the formation, or you can say it gives rise to the formation of clouds, fog, mist and dew. And water vapor, for condensing, children, it requires a surface. Okay, there must be a surface on which water vapor can condense. So here they have given you an example. Like water vapor may condense around the dust particles which are present in the air. Okay. Now in the last paragraph, children, we studied that the process of condensation gives rise to formation of clouds, then fog, mist and dew. So let us study them in detail. Now children, talking about clouds, first of all, when warm air, okay, when the moist air, it rises upwards, what happens? It first of all gets cooled. Then it gets saturated. Saturated air means the air which is full of moisture, full of water vapor. Now when the temperature falls, okay, water vapor, as we discussed earlier, condenses. Where does it condense? I told you it requires a surface. Okay, so for example, it condenses around the dust particles. Okay, and then it forms minute, very tiny droplets of water. And if the temperature is low enough, children, it is very low, then the vapor may condense into tiny crystals of ice also. Okay, if the temperature is low enough. These water droplets or ice crystals, children, which are formed, they are so light that they float in the water. Okay, and out of that the visible masses, visible means which you can see, visible masses of floating water droplets or floating ice crystals are called clouds. Talking about fog, mist and dew. Fog, in Hindi you say kohara. Okay, now fog, children, it is basically a very dense cloud. Dense means thick, okay, of tiny or minute water droplets. Now, when does fog occur? Fog occurs when the condensation process takes place in the lower layers of atmosphere. And where are these lower layers of atmosphere, children? They are close to the surface of land. Okay, or if we are talking about water body, then just above a body of water, this condensation process takes place. Okay, and this fogs, children, reduce the visibility. You cannot see clearly. Okay, even because they reduce the visibility, it is very difficult for the drivers to drive. They hinder air. Okay, that means it creates disturbances, obstruction, okay, and water traffic. Now if we talk about the mist, then there is a slight difference between two. A mist is similar to a fog, but what is the difference over here? Mist is less dense, okay, not as dense as fog. Why? Because here the droplets which are formed, they are larger in comparison to those of a fog. Then they are talking about industrial areas, children. See, in industrial areas, what happens is the smoke which comes out from the factories, okay, it mixes with the fog. And then what is formed? Smog is formed. Now talking about dew. What happens, children? See, on cold and clear nights, after the sunset, the surface of the land, okay, that cools down rapidly, that cools down very fast. And as the surface of the land cools down, the air which is in contact with that ground, children, that also cools down rapidly. Okay, so this may cause the air to become saturated. We discussed this term saturated earlier, right? Wet. Then on further cooling, condensation process begins. And as the condensation process begins, what is formed? Droplets of water are formed. Okay, they are deposited on cold surfaces, okay, like leaves, then blades of grass, okay, and are known as dew. This is known as dew. Now here in the last two lines, children, they are discussing about one more term which is not mentioned above. That is frost. Now it is same as dew, but what is the difference? See, in very cold weather, above they are talking about cold clear nights, cold weather, but here they are talking about very cold weather. When it is extremely cold, dew is deposited as tiny crystals of ice. Okay, above we studied about droplets of water which are deposited on leaves, okay, but here dew is deposited as crystals of ice, okay, tiny crystals of ice, and this is known as frost. So the only difference between the two is this. Now children, talking about precipitation, we studied about evaporation, humidity, condensation, and now precipitation. See, clouds have millions of tiny water droplets. Now, some of these water droplets, children, fall but very slowly. And some of these water droplets, they are carried up. How? By air currents. And the tiny water droplets, moving tiny droplets, children, they bump into each other. Okay, these tiny droplets, they bump into each other, they stick together, and then what is formed? They form larger droplets. Now these larger droplets, children, when they are too heavy to float, okay, as they are growing in size, okay, as they have already grown in size because tiny droplets have bumped into each other, okay. So they become heavy to float and then they fall down as rain. Same in the case of snow. See, like water droplets, ice crystals which are present in clouds, they may also grow in size, same way. And then when they become heavy, they fall as flakes of snow. So this whole process, children, of falling of condensed water vapor, it can be in the form of rain or it can be in the form of flakes of snow, is called precipitation. Now talking about water cycle, here all the terms which we have did till now from this chapter will get covered up, so just recall that. Okay. First of all, as we discussed earlier, water evaporates and it goes into the atmosphere as water vapor. Here, water which is in liquid form, it changes into gaseous form, that is water vapor. And from this water vapor, children, some of the water vapor condenses and forms clouds. And it ultimately comes back on Earth's surface as precipitation, either in the form of rain or in the form of flakes of snow, okay. So this cycle, okay, of evaporation, condensation and precipitation is known as water cycle, and this cycle goes on continuously, okay, it keeps on going, it is a continuous process. Now in the next paragraph, they are talking about conservation of water. That means we should save water for everyone, for our future generations as well. We should use the water but in a proper way. Okay. See, because the natural supply of water, that, children, varies, that differs from one place to another, and it also differs from season to season. Okay. Now our activities are affecting the natural supply of water. Now, which are such activities which are affecting the natural supply of water? We are cutting down the trees. Now, what happens when we cut down the trees? The process of transpiration, which we studied under the heading evaporation, gets reduced. Okay, and because that process of transpiration is reduced, water vapor which is released into the atmosphere, that also becomes less, right? And because less water vapor is released, cloud formation is reduced and ultimately there is less rain. Not only this, we are affecting the natural supply of water by polluting it, by adding dirty and harmful substances, okay, which makes it unfit for use. And this causes shortage of water. Even if we say that no, natural supply of water is in abundance, that means in large quantity, but what of use? We are polluting it. It's of no use then, okay. So we should take care of water, we should conserve it, and whatever natural sources of water are available, children, we should keep them free from pollution. We should not throw any dirty things, then garbage, harmful substances to it, okay. Now talking about measurement of precipitation. See, as you all know, we have done this term already, precipitation, and which is the most common form of precipitation, children? Rainfall, okay, and it is measured in millimeters. Now what happens, children, when the rain is falling, okay, over an area if we take up, okay, then we don't get a chance to collect. What happens to that rainwater? Either it will seep into the soil or it flows into the water bodies which are nearby. Or the third option can be it will evaporate. Now, the amount of rainfall, okay, at a particular place over a particular period is measured with the help of rain gauge. Now, how it is measured? See. Now, how do we measure the amount of rainfall, children, at a particular place? See, this diagram is given on page number 23, okay, a rain gauge. Now first of all, see, what does it consist of? A rain gauge consists of cylinder. Okay, can you see the cylinder outer layer? Okay, it is fitted with a collecting vessel at the bottom. At the bottom inside cylinder, children, there is a vessel, okay, collecting vessel, and there is a funnel at the top. Did you all see funnel? Okay. Now when the rain falls, children, the water from the funnel gets collected in the vessel which is given below, the collecting vessel, okay, and at the end of the day, okay, or the period which they have fixed, period of time which they have fixed for which the rainfall is measured, okay, the rainwater collected in the vessel during that time period, okay, is then poured, okay, फिर उसको किस में डाला जाता है? Measuring jar में, okay, that water is poured into the measuring jar. You can see on the other side measuring jar is given, right, to find out the amount of rainfall, okay. Now talking about the types of rainfall, okay, first one is relief rainfall, then convectional rainfall, and the third one is frontal or cyclonic rainfall. Now first, if we talk about the relief rainfall, children, you can see the diagram is given on page number 23. Now what is relief rainfall, children? It occurs when a mountain or highland lies in the path of moist winds. Okay, when the moist winds are blowing, okay, and in their path, when a mountain is coming or a highland is coming, during that time relief rainfall occurs or takes place. Now children, in the picture you can see Windward Side is given. Now what is Windward Side? It is that side of mountain which is facing the wind, okay. Then what happens is the warm and moist air, okay, you can see that also is written with an arrow, that is forced to rise along the windward slope. Okay, can you see the slope is given? So from that slope, the warm and moist air, it is forced, okay, to rise upwards, okay. As the air ascends, it cools. Ascends means as the air is moving upwards, okay, that warm air, it starts getting cooled, okay, it cools down and then it gets saturated. And finally, over there, the condensation process begins and rainfall occurs. Now children, look at the other side. Okay, that other side is known as the leeward side. We studied that the side of the mountain which faces the wind, that is known as windward side, and the other side which they have shown is the leeward side. Now from this side, children, the air descends. Descends means it moves downwards, and as it moves downwards, it becomes warmer and drier. And so there is no rain, or you can say very little rain. Okay. So this leeward side, children, it either receives little or no rain, and that is why it is known as rain shadow area. What is this area known as? Rain shadow area. Now what is the other name used for relief rainfall? It is also called as orographic rainfall. Okay, oros in Greek, it means mountain. Okay, now moving towards the next type of rainfall. Now talking about convectional rainfall. Convectional rainfall, it occurs throughout the year, that means whole year, in the equatorial belt. Now here what happens during the daytime, okay, as you all know that during the daytime, vertical rays of the sun, direct rays of the sun, okay, they fall on the land and heat up the land surface. Now as they heat up the land surface, the air which is near to the surface, children, that also gets heated up, okay, and as this air gets heated up, it starts rising. And as this air starts rising, the cool air which is already above, it starts moving downwards, okay, it sinks, okay, because it is heavier. okay, to get heated. Now this cool air, children, is moving downwards, or you can say it sinks to get heated, okay, and then that air also is forced to rise again. So this process keeps on going, okay. Thus a convectional air current is set up over here. You can see in the picture also, with the pink arrow they are showing that warm air is going up, okay, and that is, it is rising, and the cool air is coming down to get warm, and then it rises from the other side, okay. Now in this process, when the warm air, or you can say the hot air, rises over there, it cools down and then it gets saturated. After that, what is formed? Clouds are formed, and that clouds, children, they lead to heavy rainfall, very heavy rainfall, okay, especially during the afternoon or evening time. And this convectional rainfall is often accompanied by thunder and lightning, okay, bijli ke saath. Now talking about the third type of rainfall, that is frontal rainfall. It is also known as cyclonic rainfall, okay. Now during a cyclone, we studied about cyclonic winds, if you remember, in the second chapter, okay, atmosphere. So during a cyclone, what happens? Warm air and cold air, they meet from opposite directions, and the place where they meet, there a zone of separation is formed. Now what is that known as? That zone of separation is called a front, okay. You can see in the picture also it is given. Now what happens is, the warm air, or you can say the hot air, you all know it is lighter, okay, so it rises over the heavier air. Now which is heavier air? Cold air. So when this warm air rises, children, it cools down over there, okay, then it saturates, and what is formed? Clouds are formed, and that clouds lead to heavy rain. So in the picture also you all can see that the warm air, okay, it is rising over the cold air, okay. This type of rainfall, children, it is very common in subpolar low pressure belts, okay. Now talking about the major water bodies. You all know, children, that our planet Earth is called a blue planet because 71% of our planet is covered with water. Okay, so water bodies, they cover 71% of Earth's surface. At present, you all know that equator divides the Earth into two equal halves, northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere. Southern hemisphere has more water, okay, in comparison to land, okay, and northern hemisphere has more land in comparison to water. But this distribution, children, of land and water body, that changes but slowly, okay. Now under the same topic, page number 24, they are discussing few things related with oceans. See, children, oceans, they cover 97% of the water which is present on our planet. And if we compare water body with land, then you all might be knowing, we had discussed earlier, that water body takes longer time to heat up also and cool down also in comparison to land. Okay, so oceans, they heat up and cool down much more slowly than land. They can store more heat than the atmosphere. And oceans, children, they are the main source of water vapor which is present in the atmosphere, okay. So these properties of oceans which we studied just now, that influences the climate. Influence means prabhav padna, okay. So because of these properties, okay, the places which are near the coast, they don't experience extreme temperatures in comparison to the places which are away from the coast. Also, these places which are near the coast, they get more rainfall, okay. So after reading this, you might have understood that how much important oceans are, children. Not only this, Oceans are economically also important to us. How? Because of the mineral deposits which are found on the ocean floors, because of the marine organisms which are living in the oceans, okay? And the oceans, as you all know, they are also used for trade and transport purpose, okay? Between countries, between different continents. Now, if we talk about the other major water bodies, okay, found on land, they are rivers, lakes and glaciers. But as we discussed above, children, that oceans, they cover 97% of water which is present on our planet. But these water bodies, that is rivers, lakes and glaciers, they hold a very small percent of water, okay? But these water bodies, children, they are very, very important to us because they influence human life to a great extent. If you remember that people in the early times, they used to live near rivers, okay, river valleys. Why? Because getting water was easier for them, okay. This water, children, is used for drinking purpose, for irrigation purpose, for power generation and many other things. End of session. Hope you all enjoyed it. See you in the next lecture.